And I'm going to go ahead and pass the floor over to Tom. Tom?
Yes, thank you, Khan, and thank you for the introduction, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending this webinar today. We'll be going over a presentation that's a bit long, but I'll try to go through it quickly. And as Khan mentioned, please do type in your questions if you do have questions, and we'll try to address those. This is a very broad topic, so we'll keep this at as high level as possible, but you can get into it in quite a lot of detail. So once again, today we'll be covering what's new in 4.x, actually specifically in 4.1, and what are the migration procedures, migration steps, and required to migrate from prior versions, such as 3.1, and how that impacts your organization. Here's the agenda for today. Again, we'll focus on the new features in 4.1, specifically on web intelligence, information design tool, multiple source and data federation within that, the CMC, the central management console, AOLAP, Explore, and desktop intelligence. We'll also take a look at the migration considerations, the details surrounding that, and the report conversion tool that is new in this particular version that converts reports from Desky into Webby. And then further, we'll take a look at the platform as a whole from a different perspective, what is new, what is different in this release, and look at more specific topics such as sizing considerations, virtualization, and licensing. And following that, we'll have our Q&A. All right, just to give you a brief introduction about myself, I've been working in the BI and data warehousing industry for the past 14, almost 15 years now. I am the Vice President of Business Analytics at Broad Street Data. We lead teams at many different organizations, many different projects, implementing business intelligence solutions and providing advisory and consulting services. All right, so jumping right in to the 4.1 new features. There's a wide gamut of new capabilities and new features. There's an SAP document detailing all of the detailed features. It's about 60 pages long, and in detail, it actually talks about exactly what is new and it gives detailed descriptions of those new features. But just as a high-level overview, there's things that really stand out. Well, there's the ability to have universes that connect to multiple sources and use data federation to join the data across multiple databases, multiple database types. You can connect HANA to an Excel. You can connect all sorts of different sources in a multi-source universe. That is really a key new feature. The integration and simplification of the platform, it's much simpler to install and deploy. You no longer have to have separate installations for Explorer, for mobile, for Lifecycle Manager. All those components are now bundled as a single installation, and it's much simpler and easier to install. We also have additional database types that you can connect to, and there's a wide gamut of those, including in-memory technologies from Oracle, such as Exadata. Enhancements in the SDK are enormous in this release. There's quite a lot more capability from an SDK perspective. For the first time ever, you can actually programmatically access the universe and use the universe semantic layer in third-party applications. Which is a really big capability to leverage that semantic layer, that capability. Also, the SDK for BusinessObjects itself has been enhanced quite a bit. It's web service driven, so you can just use web service calls to retrieve information and query and build custom applications using this new technology. We do have enhancements on all fronts of the BI front-end tools. They're more user-friendly, they're more intuitive, they're easier to learn and easier to use. We do have the ability to use more offline mode products such as Explore, such as dashboards, such as Webby in offline mode, so you can use them without connecting to the server when you're on the road. The whole mobile capability is greatly enhanced with Explore and Mobile BI, MoBI. So there's a lot of new capability there as well. So we'll get into quite a lot more detail of that, but first I just want to express at a very high level point that 4.1, 4.x, 4.0 platform is very different from 3.1. So all of these aspects of this platform, from an administration point of view, from an operational point of view, and from a BI application point of view, are very different than 3.1, so or R2 or any of the previous versions. So the best practices that you applied in those environments may not apply in 4.1, especially from like a sizing perspective, from an administration, design, and security and architecture standpoint. It is different. It is new, and it is different, and it is an enterprise-grade platform. So it does have a lot more options in terms of tuning, in terms of backups, restores, diagnostics, and audits that are built into the application that weren't there before. Previously, you'd had to either custom develop those or use third-party tool sets. Now they're actually bundled and available to that. BI applications are very different too. You have tighter connectivity with BW, direct connectivity without having to use a OLAP universe in prior releases, which was very, very painful. And other enhancements specifically along the lines of visualizations such as graphs. They look the same and consistent across all of the BI applications, whether you build a pie chart in Crystal, Webby, or dashboards. It has a similar and same look and feel as it does across all the applications that it didn't have before. Okay, so one of the main new applications that's been added to the 4X suite is the information design tool. We have a new way of building the semantic layer. The universe is now a much more dynamic and much more capable semantic layer that can leverage a lot more features and a lot more capability. With the IDT tool, we now separate and create a different paradigm in terms of universe design. Previously, the whole universe, including the classes and objects, was all done in one screen. Here, everything is separate now. We define the data foundation, the data structures, separately from the so-called business layer, which then defines the classes and objects. Those are two separate components, and by separating those out, we can, for example, build multiple business layers on the same data foundation, and different users can have access to that. So there's a lot more reusability and structure involved in that. Further to that, we have a lot more databases that we can connect to that we didn't have before, including pass-through authentication to those databases. We now support SQL Server 2012, IBM DB2 10, Teradata 14, and so forth and so forth. There's a list available on the screen right there. And we have direct connectivity to HANA, which is a great enhancement, including also OLAP sources, so not just the relational databases, but also OLAP databases we can connect to from the IDT tool. Previous to that, you had to create an OLAP universe in a separate tool. So from a conversion point of view, most components convert fairly straightforward. There are some issues in regards to conversion, and we'll go through those later. They typically center around prompts, but object-level security and all of those other components, they migrate straight through. There's no issues with that. So here we have basically a list of all the capabilities and features and what is new in the UNX, which is the IDT-based universes. With 4 and 4.1, you have the capability of using also the old universes. So the designer tool is still there, You still have the ability to use and build and maintain your old universes, but it is recommended to convert them over to the Unix standard, as they are the path going forward and the direction that we're going to be taking. There are some cases where you may not want to convert your universe if it's very complicated, if it has a lot of @prompts using the @prompt function, then those will have to be rebuilt and redeveloped to use the new prompting capability within the IDT tool. So most of these are supported. Sorry, I went through too quickly. So there are some features that don't exist, and some features that exist in one but not the other, and vice versa. So again, this list you'll be able to go through in more detail. I don't want to spend too much time on this since we have quite a bit of material to cover. But the main thing is that there are a lot of new capabilities, new features, and it is a much more stable, much better design tool. For example, managing and defining contexts, you can do that directly on the visual data foundation itself. Previously, you had to open up the context itself and select the join. You couldn't just shift-click and add the join type of thing. You had to actually go to a separate window, and it was very, very painful to do because you get a list of all the joins that are there, and having to select and find the right one was very, very painful. Here, you can just visually add a join by selecting the context and then clicking on plus and minus to include the join to that context and make it a lot simpler to maintain and manage and visually see what is part of that context. So that is a huge, huge benefit. Another new feature that is also making a lot of headways, especially on the 4.1 scene, is the multi-source universe capability. And with 4.1, we have a visual data federation capability. So basically, we're not developing ETL, but we are defining visually how the data is joined from different sources. Previously, it had to write complex SQL statements using derived tables in 4.0 to make that work. But with 4.1, we do have that visual data federation editor, which allows me to define the relationships between tables visually and define that federated table, which will be the join between the various multiple source objects. So that is now done visually just through drag and drop, and it has immense implications in terms of combining data from different sources without having to do complex ETL development, complex ETL work. This is not a substitute for modeling and developing ETL properly, but it does allow you to get insight into your data at a much faster pace by using this data federation. Okay, so moving onwards to the central management console, and another big thing in 4 is that we have a lot more services, and we have this notion of the APS service, which bundles multiple services together. And by default, you have one APS that has all the services included in it. However, this is not ideal for production environments where you have to size the environment correctly, where you have to allocate memory to a particular process correctly, and create an environment that is more stable across a larger deployment. So in 4.0, we had the manual process of setting up multiple APSs and including all the services that needed to be part of that. This is now done through a post-installation wizard, which immensely simplifies this process. So this configuration wizard not only does the APS split out, but it also does a lot of other capability as well. For example, it has the ability to select the applications that you want to enable in your BI deployment so that you have a more stable and more optimal environment. So for example, if I'm not using Crystal Reports, I don't need the Crystal Report services running. I can just uncheck Crystal Reports, and automatically all the services allocated to that will be disabled, and my environment will be more tuned and more will be more responsive. In addition to that, I also select the size of my deployment. So I have the option to pick from a extra small, small, medium, large, and extra large. And what that does, it's like ordering pizza, is basically defines the APS split out for me based on the amount of resources available on the machine. It can't determine that automatically, but you have to pick which deployment size to use based on a matrix that we have of this particular of the various deployments that are available. And here you can see that table of the specific services that are included in each of the APS split outs. So in an extra small, you just have one APS split out with a minimum RAM requirement anywhere between 6 to 8 gigs on the box allocated to that APS. So that's typically used in a sandbox type environment. Small is a development or test environment, and as you can see, the services break out more granularly, and there's more memory allocated to each of the services. So the environment size is differently. Now, this is for a single node deployment only. If you're doing a clustered environment, obviously this has to be taken into account as well. So in the clustered setup, you would manually configure these post this configuration process. So again, I'm getting quite deep into the administration aspect of the BI platform, but this helps doing installations and doing deployments immensely. Furthermore, you can actually script this and deploy this in multiple landscapes or multiple boxes through command line scripting that you can do post installation, which can also be scripted through command line. Okay, so going now back to the front end tools, AOLAP, that's the replacement for Voyager, has quite a lot of new capability as well. That's the data mining tool, not the data exploration tool Explorer, but the data mining tool. So it's meant for analysts and users who are very advanced and are interested in mining data. This is typically previously done through data mining tools or through Excel via like a pivot style view or tables. With the analysis for OLAP tool, we have a lot more capability that goes a lot beyond that. We have more visual capability, and we have the standard pivot table layout where you can just drag various objects in, and they get calculated on the fly in real time. So this is great for if you're using SSAS, SQL Server Analysis Services, or even HANA with analytic views, where you get that OLAP capability and that cube performance that creates those aggregates at various levels. In addition to that, there's a lot of new features that get added here. For example, the deferred update. So you can freeze the data and not have it updating as you're formatting your report, and you have a lot tighter integration with cube like providers. And furthermore, you can also join data with multiple cubes as well, so you can do that directly on the front end. In terms of connectivity, like I mentioned, yeah, we do have Oracle, we do have Essbase, we have Teradata, OLAP, and we have the standard DW, HANA, SSAS, BPC, and so forth. So we do have a lot of those connections and data providers supported. And again, there's hundreds of new features, but I just picked out some of the key ones from a visualization perspective. For example, you have the waterfall chart capability, which is great for analysis, and you can have a very visual view of your data, how it stacks together. It's especially critical for if you have the expansion and you want to expand upon a particular set of metrics. You still have the total, which becomes basically your stacked bar, and then the individual components which sum up to it. Another very, very interesting feature of this analysis for OLAP is once you've built these workspaces, as they're called, you can export them as a analysis for OLAP application, and that can be deployed either on somebody's desktop, through the browser, or on a mobile platform. And it becomes a very rich, interactive dashboard that literally takes only minutes to build. So it's, if you're using Voyager, if you're using analysis, you can create these and build these applications for end users that can navigate these and use these OLAP applications very, very intuitively and very easily, and it saves you a lot of time. For example, from building a custom dashboard. If you're building a custom dashboard in Excelsius, you have to build all the queries, you have to build all the connectivity, all the data providers, all the formatting, all the linking manually on the spreadsheets. Here, everything is done for you. Now, you do have a lot less formatting capability than you do in Excelsius or dashboards, but this in my mind is a very, very powerful feature. Other new features that are added are, for example, the ability to drill into detailed data that will take me to the details, for example, that are in a Webby report. So I can pass parameters now to an open document function or a Webby report directly. Previously, I could only do that to Crystal. So now we do have that capability as well. All right, so a new tool that's been now put together with 4 and installs with 4 and is available to 4.0 is Explorer. Now that's a data exploration tool. It's very different from a data mining tool. This is more geared towards simple and quick and quick and dirty data exploration. So, for example, if I want to find a particular outlier in my data set, I can search for it. I can also search directly using just context search English verbiage in my search. For example, here we see an example of that: sales revenue for T-shirts. And in my view, automatically T-shirts gets highlighted and sales revenue gets displayed. So just by using natural verbiage, I can search my data, and I can access very large data sets that are behind the scenes, like HANA or other in-memory type of data sets. There is no definition of formatting of the report. It's all done just by these facets that are dragged in, that are available to me, that I can hide or show, and I can use this application on a mobile platform as well. It can be Android, it can be iPad or iPhone as well. So it's more geared towards an end user application, a manager's application, or a salesperson's application that's on the road that they quickly want to navigate some of the data and see some of the visualizations and some of the explorations. Again, it's more geared as a self-service type of application, much simpler to use than building reports in Webby on a universe. And by publishing these information spaces, your users can access them very quickly, very rapidly, and do their data exploration. We also have tighter integration with geospatial analysis, so we do have visualizations related to maps, and just like with dashboards and with Explorer, there is the capability to integrate with Google Maps as well. Another new feature, this is again new in this particular version, is the automatic detection of dates and grouping them by month, by year, and also automatically sorting months correctly, which was a problem previously, but this has been resolved. So this is, for time-based analysis, this is now available to us. We have tighter integration with HANA, which can translate our data set on the fly. It can pick up our locale and translate verbiage and data based on how the data is structured. Furthermore, we can pass single sign-on into HANA so that the authentication and data security can be applied as well. All right, now another very interesting topic that's new in 4.1 is desktop intelligence. Previously, SAP announced that desktop intelligence will no longer be supported in 4.0 and will be end of life as of 3.1. However, there are still a lot of customers that are not migrating to 4.0 because they have a lot of reports on Desky, and this has become a bit of a challenge, a bit of an issue because of the end of support coming up for Desky. So SAP came up with a solution, and it's a very, very interesting, very good solution that allows you to use desktop intelligence, the 3.1 installation of desktop intelligence in a 4.0, in a 4.x environment. Now, what that enables you to do is make sure that you can format your report, make sure that you can make all the changes to the report, and prepare it for conversion to Webby. Yes, you can develop new reports. Yes, you can maintain existing reports, but that's not what it's geared for. It's geared for license compliance, so you don't have to have two separate installations, two separate versions, and be out of compliance. It's geared to enable you to use the desktop tools in a two-tier mode, meaning you connect to the database directly on the universe. It won't be able to. You will still be able to publish your reports to the repository, to the CMC, to the Launchpad, but you can't. You can only view instances of those reports that have been outputted to a PDF or an Excel. You can't view the reports in Desky, they cannot be translated by the server to Desky through the web because there is no Desky services running. There's an integration that mimics the 3.1 capability to publish reports from the Desky client, but you can't view them through the browser. You can download the Desky files, but you can't view them. So this desktop intelligence compatibility pack is now part of 4.1. It does enable your existing 3.1 Desky installation to connect to it. So again, priority maintenance is scheduled to end for 3.1 in 2015, and a priority 1 support enhanced maintenance is until 2017. Just so here you can kind of see the architecture of the new solution. It does enable you to use the desktop client, as you can see, and connect to using this bridge adapter to a 4.0 environment. But you do have to run your reports if you want to refresh the data in a two-tier mode, not through the server directly against the database. All right, so that covers a very high-level overview of the new tool sets and new features and new capabilities. Let's talk about migration considerations and things you have to take into account when you want to migrate from R2 or 3.1 into 4.1. So yes, basically the key thing to make sure is that you're compliant with the product availability matrix, the PAM. The most recent PAM will tell you if you are compliant in terms of the browser that you're using, in terms of the components that you have, in terms of system requirements, operating system requirements, and so forth. The PAM is the guide for the new migration. Now, if you have a prior version to R2, you have to go to R2 first. You have to upgrade to R2 at the very least. If you're using 5 or 6, you have to go to R2, and then from R2 you can go directly into 4.1. Now, another thing, if you do have 4.0, 4.1 is not a migration, it's an upgrade, so you install it just over top of 4.0. And one of the new features that's been added to 4.0 and 4.1 is the report conversion tool that converts Desky reports into Webby reports. This has been greatly enhanced and has a lot more capability now that Webby has more functions and more capabilities as well that didn't exist previously and made the conversion impossible, if not undoable at all. So this tool actually enables the conversion from your old Desky reports into Webby. It runs on the server, and it is a part of the enterprise platform installation. And not only will it actually convert the reports itself, but it will actually convert all the instances, the schedules, everything that you had before. So the instances, you can specify which instances that you want to convert. If you don't want to convert all of them, you can specify specifically which instances if you had scheduled reports. So it's a very, very in-depth, capable tool that is very useful for conversion purposes. Now, on the enterprise platform, we have a lot of new things, a lot of differences that you also have to take into consideration. So, like I mentioned before, you have a much simplified installation. The database for the repository is now Sybase ASE. All the new tools are included as part of the installation. So, your lifecycle manager, Subversion, IDT tool, monitoring, upgrade manager, Explorer, mobile, those all components are part of a single installation. Previously, you had to download 15 different things, and then if you had to do patches, you had to patch 15 different things. It's all just a lot simpler now with a simplified installation and a simplified patching process. Obviously, if you have multiple split outs into multiple tiers on separate machines, then it becomes a bit more complex, but it's quite a lot simpler than it was before. Now we also have the mobile support, so dashboards can be published as HTML5, no longer just Flash, so they will work on an iPad or an iPhone as well. And the ability to manage your content that's published in the mobile environment as well. So 4.1 platform, even though it looks very similar to 3.1 in terms of the services, it actually isn't. It's very, very different. 4.x is 64-bit only, so it runs on a 64-bit environment and platform, be it Windows or Unix or Linux. It is a true 64-bit architecture versus 32-bit, so that enables us to allocate more than just 4 gigs of memory to a particular process, and enable the environment to be a lot more stable. It is architecturally different. It is a lot bigger too. The minimum system requirements are very different from 3.1. 3.1, you could install it on a 2 CPU box with 4 gigs of RAM, and it would run fine. With 4.0, the bare minimum is 8 gigs, and absolute minimum recommended amount is 16 by SAP. So anything below that, it's not going to be anywhere usable as it's intended to be. Just to give you an overview, here's a screenshot of all of the different services that exist in the 4.x platform. We have a lot more services and a lot more granular tuning capability, a lot more granular capability of disabling individual features and services, and this is a lot more capable than it was before. So there are a lot of different components that are now part of this platform. From a sizing perspective, it's not a black box anymore. It's not magic. It's very, very straightforward. You do have to go through a sizing exercise. You do have to have a good understanding of architecture and what your intentions are. Do you want a fault-tolerant environment? Do you want a clustered for load balancing and failover capability? So that all affects your sizing as well. But SAP has created a utility for sizing that immensely simplifies the sizing process. So SAP.com/BI sizing, This little app enables you to, and it has very detailed descriptions of each of the features, basically template your environment, and it will tell you what the requirements will be for sizing for that environment. So here you can see a screenshot of that app. And basically, I enter in my number of users and the average report size for each of the front-end tools, whether it's AOLAP, Crystal Reports, Dashboard Design, or Webby. And it will tell me, in terms of the CPU and memory requirements for this particular type of environment. So, again, this is based on active concurrent usage. So here, you see that I've defined about 65 business users and 15 expert users. Those are active concurrent users. So this would be about 80 in total, which would amounts to an environment that has about 1,500 users in the system. So it's roughly about 5 to 10% that are active concurrent. So based on that, based on those assumptions, we get a better understanding of the sizing requirement that is necessary in terms of the processing tier, the intelligence tier, and the application tier as well. So it will tell us what is the utilization, what is the allocation of memory, and then we can take that and split out our APSs through the configuration wizard accordingly. But here, as you can see, the environment is sized for about 1,500 users, and allocation is about 56 gigs of RAM, so about 64 would be allocated to this particular box. Now, CPU is using SAP counter known as SAPs. Those are the SAP operations and that are counted, and I think the translation is about one CPU is about 8,000 SAPs. So in this particular case, one CPU core is about 8,000 SAPs. But I'd have to check that. But that is the tool that we can gauge our environment size with, and make sure that we have the correct number of cores, the correct amount of memory allocated to it. So again, 4.1 environment is sized very differently than 3.1 and requires this sizing effort to correctly make sure that you have sufficient resources available. So we do have an upgrade manager tool that is available to us as well. This will upgrade your content from prior versions R2 and 3.1 into the new environment. And this is not used to promote reports and data within from your dev to QA, from QA to prod. For that, we use the lifecycle manager and the versioning tool. Much more monitoring and much better auditing and capability of storing history on uptime and environment monitoring is now part of 4.1. We also have probes that can be hooked into MOM and Tivoli or Solution Manager. So we have quite a lot enterprise-grade monitoring capability that is now part of 4.1 and included in the CMC. Subversion, again, part of 4.0 installation as before and higher. It's integrated now. It's integrated into the CMC. Previously, it was a separate application. Now it's part of the CMC. You can do backups with it. You can do promotions with it from one environment to another, export buyer files, and it has the ability to version and do partial restores from a versioned build that you promoted from one environment to another. So it has quite a bit of capability in terms of that alone, and it's now included as part of the 4.0, 4.1 platform. So it's a huge benefit to use it rather than manually promoting universes and reports and so forth, which was a pain to do previously. Audit, again, this is more along the lines of tracking user activity, not content audit, but for that we use Information Steward. This is auditing of user activity. This is now simplified a lot in 4.0. You have a single place now where you can manage all of your audit options. The default levels are configured out of the box. And the ability to define how long audits are kept. So this depends on the database size that you're using. And you do have a toolkit that you can download separately that has universes and reports based on your audit database type already pre-built and available for you to install if you wanted to. So we do have also a new BI Launchpad. It replaces InfoView. And it's a single point to access all of the BI content. It allows you to view the most recent history right on the Launchpad screen, and allows you to define your own workspaces as well, so you can customize those from a user's perspective. So it's much simpler and more intuitive to use than InfoView was. From an architecture standpoint, 4.1 and 3 did support virtualization. This is now enhanced and has a lot more capability as well. We have 100% support for virtualization when it comes to 4.1. And it supports various virtualization platforms, VMware, Hyper-V, Citrix-Zen, all those platforms are supported. However, you have to use CPU and memory reservation feature of those platforms. Otherwise, your sizing exercise isn't done correctly, and it won't make that memory and CPU capability available to your BI platform when it's needed. Basically, it will share that with other virtual platforms that are running on the same hardware. Again, it is supported, but from a sizing exercise, you have to make sure that the environment is set up correctly and the architecture and the platform is configured properly as well. Okay, and from a high-level perspective, that will conclude our presentation for today. I'm going to hand it over to Khan now, who's going to talk to you a little bit about licensing and compliance in terms of 4.x and how that affects and changes your outlook in terms of the necessity to migrate to 4.1. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Again, good morning, gentlemen. Khan Ceylon here. Tom, we did have a question coming through our chat functionality. And Tom, that question is from Nadoon. The question is, when migrating from 3.1 to 4.1, how much more hardware increase is needed at the server level? And this is in reference to how many more CPUs or cores is required. Did you want to address that question?
Yes, I can definitely talk to that. You do have to go through a sizing exercise. Sizing is very different in the 4.x world, in 4.x platform. So again, take a look at the existing environment. You can look at your audit logs to see what type of activity you have in your environment. You can see where your concurrency is at, how many users are actively using the system at any given point in time, and what type of activities they perform. And from that, you can determine the figures that you will plug into that sizing tool, and that will give you a rough estimate of what would be required to maintain that. In terms of CPU and core and memory utilization, it is much higher on the 4.x environment than it was in 3.1. 3.1 had a lot lower requirements than 4 does. So this does change now, and in addition to that, you get a lot more capability that you didn't have before, and which takes up more resources on the infrastructure.
Thank you. Nadoon, hopefully that answers your question. If not, feel free to send us an email at nextj.events@nextj.com. We'd be more than happy to address those on a one-to-one basis as well. Any other questions out there from our attendees on the webinar? Feel free to enter those questions into the chat bar on the side of the WebEx, and we can get those answered in the time allotted today. As a follow-on to some of Tom's final comments around licensings and things like that, we do come across many of our clients here internally, and both from the SAP side, on questions around their licensings and terms and contracts of the software that was currently purchased before moving to 4.1. Again, my name is Con Ceylon. I'm one of the senior account executives here leading the SAP Business Objects practice as well. And I'll be more than happy to discuss your licensing questions as related to your contracts. There are a few things that need to be potentially addressed, and I can be that conduit for you within SAP to address those and or negotiate some licensing contracting rules and potentially protecting your investment in the SAP software. A couple of other, frequently asked questions that I come across going from 3.1 to 4.1 from clients who had purchased the software many years ago. If we have clients that are on the CPU model from SAP, i.e. licensed by the CPU, there's a couple of considerations you do need to look into. If you are a client that has software based on the CPU metric and it was licensed or purchased before July 1st, 2009, you need to be aware that your contract may not allow you to utilize the virtualization technologies in the marketplace today. Again, I'd be more than happy to discuss those with you on an individual basis. Again, feel free to reach out to us and I'll contact you back on that as well. Customers on the CPU licensing, you would need to look at either buying more of the same. Since it is an existing contract, you are grandfathered, you can buy more of the same and lock yourself into the new terms and conditions from SAP. There's also programs within SAP where you can actively trade in your licenses, receive credit back for the purchase of those licenses that occurred as a full credit and apply that towards new SAP software, whether it's on a named or concurrent session metric, and also taking advantage of the new bundled offerings from SAP, which include all of the end user tools, and take advantage of those offerings. Again, be more than happy to address those on a one-to-one basis. I think we have another question come in from Alex, asking if we can elaborate on the auditing in 4.x. It looks like there's a question saying that it's not supported. Tom, would you have some insight, or could you elaborate on some of the auditing capabilities in 4.x?
Absolutely. There is auditing that is part of the 4.x platform now. By default, it doesn't include any audit reports, but all of the services and all of the components can be fine-tuned and managed in one place. Previously, it was done at the service level. Here, it's all done in one single place, in one single environment. Furthermore, if you want to use the provided universe and the provided set of reports that you can download and implement those, you can, or you can also build your own universe and reports, or customize the universe and build your own reports on top of that. So again, this tracks user activity. It's not an audit of content or security. It tracks user activity on the environment. So who logged in when, what report did they run, what parameters they use, how long that report ran, and so forth. So you can very detailed capability of fine-tuning those parameters of what exactly you want to capture. And it's all done in one place, rather than previously being scattered throughout. So that is now there, and it's part of the 4.1 platform. If there are any specific questions surrounding that, I'd be happy to address those.
Thank you, Tom. I think there's a question from Philip on what about the shortfalls in Voyager, and when will those be addressed? I guess it's more of a SAP product management question from the SAP themselves, but my understanding is Voyager is no longer available, and the tools that replace those are now things like Explorer and or some of the new tools like Lumira.
No, it's Analysis for All App is the direct replacement for Voyager, and then we do have Analysis for Excel as well. Just like previously we had that capability in Excel as well. But Analysis for All App does address a lot of the shortfalls that Voyager had. Voyager was a very basic tool. Analysis for All App has quite a lot more capability. For example, the ability to handle much more cells on the screen than Voyager ever could is now possible to analyze much larger sets of information. We also have a lot more capability in terms of merging multiple cubes, building formulas, building calculations, much more formula-driven filtering capability. There's a huge list of new capabilities and new features that are available today, and that will also be coming in the near future as well. So with subsequent patches and service packs to 4.1. Is there any specific feature or function that you meant by shortcomings of Voyager, or any other capability that you're looking for in terms of data mining?
We're good for now, Tom. Is the answer to your question.
Okay, good.
I guess we'll wait another minute to see if there's any other questions coming in. Again, more than happy to address questions that do come up. Please submit the questions, and we will contact you on a one-to-one basis and address those questions individually. I think we do have a question coming in, Tom. One moment. Well, I think that's it for now, Tom. No more questions coming in at this moment. Again, that concludes our webinar for today. Again, I'd like to extend a large thank you to our speaker, Tom, and of course to all the attendees on the phone today. As a reminder, again, we will be archiving this presentation, and you will receive a follow-up email with the link to that archived version. Your feedback, again, is very valuable to us, so please take the time to share it via the outgoing survey or by emailing nextj.events@nextj.com. Again, that's nextj.events@nextj.com. You may also use that email to submit your questions. Thank you, and have yourselves a great day.